Welcome back to Long Delays Hobbies. Today we're going to be painting Elrond's personal assistant, aka Lindir, from the Hobbit range of miniatures from Games Workshop. He has some decent rules, and he's been sitting in my paint cabinet for a while, so I thought it would be a good day to get to him. We're going to be starting with his cloak, which we're going to base coat in Thondia Brown. The coat is a pretty significant part of this miniature, so just take 2 to 3 coats to make sure you get over it, because it is kind of in some ways the highlight of the mini. And after we're done, we're going to use the Fang to paint Lindir's jacket. And just make sure you get all those little spots of Lindir's jacket underneath his chin. Turn the miniature upside down if you need to make sure you get all those different hard to reach spots. And for his boots, I chose to use Mornvang Brown. As always, or almost always, when I use Mornvang Brown, I use the air version, just because it means that I can paint directly out of the pot. I don't have to worry about thinning it down, because the paint is already thinned down when it comes to air paints. I do have to use an additional 1 or 2 coats, but I still prefer to use air paints when using whenever possible, just because it's just saves me time. Once I finished up the boots, I moved on to Lindir's skin, which I painted with Cadian Flesh Tone, since he is an elf and has the lighter elf skin. He doesn't have a lot of skin exposed on this miniature, so it's really just his face and the little hands that are sticking out. So not a ton of detail to paint in this step. But one thing that is easy to miss is his ears, so just make sure you pick those out. The next detail I painted was Rhinax's hide, which I used to paint his scabbard and his hair. He does have quite a bit of hair, so just make sure you catch all of it without going over that Cadian Flesh Tone you used to paint his ears. And finally, you want to use Lead Belcher to paint out his little diadem here. He's also got the hilt of his sword that sticks out of the scabbard. So just go slowly whenever you're painting his diadem, so you don't go over the Rhinax's hide in his hair. And the final step is the pants, which I painted a slightly different shade of blue than the rest of his coat, just to make them stick out. I used Cantor Blue. I also corrected my earlier mistake of painting the top part of the bottom part of the pants in Mornvang Brown. I just painted over it here, so it was like it never happened. And now we're on to washing. I'm going to use Drakenhof Nightshade here just to wash over the pants and the blue jacket. I used quite a bit of wash here so I could let the wash do its work for me, get into all those recesses. This is a fine cast model. It does have a lot of recesses, so you can use that to your advantage. Just make sure you dump a lot of wash in those brushes to get into those recesses. Same thing with when you're doing the Agri-Exert shade on the hair and on the brown cloak. Put a lot of wash in that brush and let it get down to the recesses. Let those little cracks and crevices be an advantage for you rather than a disadvantage. And for the skin, I use Reikland Flesh Shade. Most important part here is just to make sure you get the flesh shade into the eyes and cheekbone area as well as in between the fingers. And finally, for the bits of metal in the miniature, I use Nuln Oil. Just a kind of a light wash of Nuln Oil here on the hilt of the sword. And so now we're done with washing. I chose to highlight back up or layer back up with the fang on his jacket. Just going back over, leaving all those washes in the recess with the fang. And now for some Gorthor Brown to highlight the cloak. As I mentioned earlier, the cloak is in a way kind of like the centerpiece of this model, so make sure you really take your time highlighting here. Good highlights on this cloak, which has a ton of different folds in it, will really kind of make the difference in making the model like stand out. There's a lot of different places that you would need to highlight here. Let's move on to the face. I always start with the eyes when I'm painting a face. So Ulthuan Gray Air is what I prefer to use. And I always paint the eyes first when I'm painting a face because if I mess up, I can much more easily fix it than if I fully paint all the detail on the face and then go to the eyes. So just go in slowly here, just put a little bit of paint on, paint the recess, and if you screw up, it's fine, just fix it with your previous Reikland Flesh Shade and Cadian Flesh Tone. And doing the same thing with the pupils, I used Abaddon Black Air to paint a very thin line across the middle of the Ulthuan Gray Air. And now that that's done, I will go ahead and put some very fine highlights of Kislev flesh on the skin. And now we're going to start highlighting up his jacket. We're going to use some rust gray to begin with. Just mainly focusing on the edges where the light would catch. So he's also got a belt there and some folds, some very small folds of cloth there on the sleeves. So that's kind of where I focused my highlighting efforts on. He's also got some threads that are holding the two sides of the jacket together. I also highlighted those as well. And to highlight the pants, I use Alitok Blue. As always, just try not to touch the steps of paint that you previously painted. And for the boots, you'll use Scrag Brown. This is a little bit subtle, but I feel it is necessary. Really makes the boots pop. And I used Iron Hand Steel to kind of layer over / highlight the metallic portions to bring the silver back out of them on the hilt and the diadem. And the final step was the extreme highlights on his coat. So I just brought some very fine highlights of Fenrisian Gray. And the same positions I did previously with the Rust Gray. So the outer folds of his coat, the inner folds of his sleeves, as well as the threads holding the two portions of the jacket together. And with some additional grassy turf basing, that is Lindir all done. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you very much. I think Lindir is now ready to go and continue to be Elrond's assistant and take the best of notes he can. Thanks again for watching.